Good morning, Mr. Palmer. See, now it makes sense because you weren't doing your dancing before, and now you can because you can actually hear it.
Telling you, man, being an audio engineer is hard.
That's what they would all tell us, yes.
Give me stuff you can't see or hear or feel. I'm perfectly fine. You add one of those things in, man, I'm done.
Noted. How are you, sir?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Ducky, can't complain. It's middle of May,
Mm-hmm.
and we might as well just get right into the meat and potatoes of it. We have not one, but two new access points to talk about.
Hold on a second.
Uh-huh.
I can't let this fly.
Sure.
We can't just get right into it. We're not even a minute in. We didn't go off the rails.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about some abstract topic that has no bearing on technology.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure I can emotionally handle this type of show.
You know, I feel like we need an emotional support dog for Jim.
Hold on.
I was going to say, we do have some. I'm sure we could get you one. Now we've gone off the rails. There you go. There's your emotional support puppy.
Here's my emotion. So now we can, all right, I'm good.
See, and we didn't want to go too obscure. We didn't want to do anything, the chit chat. Because, I mean, it's not one AP, Jim. It's two brand new APs. That's big. Just kind of get right to the chase, get right to the point.
What's a couple brand new APs amongst friends? I mean,
pretty cool if you ask me.
Look, I got two old APs sitting on the floor over here. I mean,
we got plenty of old APs, but it's new.
But now I have a puppy. Okay.
See, and now just like that, we're off the rails. You've got a little bit of obscurity. People got to see you scoot in your chair. If they're watching, if you're not watching, please come hit us on YouTube, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. But watch Jim slide around in his chair. But anyways, the important stuff.
Also, I've also proven that my background is not some like weird generated background. Like I can actually interact with my background.
Yes, you and your million radios.
It's not a million.
No, it's like 12.
Well, it's 10 that I can transmit on and 1 that I can listen on.
So I was close. I said 11.
Yeah.
All right. now can we talk about some new APs, Mr. Palmer?
God.
Come on, the people. Come on, let's let the tease. It's been teased, So let's show them the goods.
So do new APs now. It's funny. I use this all the time and people always ask me, they're like, "But you have the inside information," and I'm like, "Yeah, I have a lot of inside information, but I actually I probably use our public website more than I use our internal stuff." Mainly because it helps me know like what somebody else has already gone to legal through and been like, "Hey, can we talk about this?" And I go, "Yay, it's on the website." So I get to talk about it. So that's actually where today's episode came from, is because I was scrolling down through here on the website. And I realized that if I click on the Wi-Fi 7 generation right here on the little filter stuff on the left-hand side, I click on that. Hey, look at that. We got 3 APs, whereas like a month ago, we only had 1 AP. So
I think it was like a week and a half ago. We only had 1, to be fair.
Well,
the press release for 1 went out last week. I think the other one, so maybe it was 2.
Yeah. But that's why I said a month ago. So a month ago we had the 1. It was the R670, which we had an episode last year where we talked about the R670, but now we have the R670 and the T670, which pick your flavor, Mr. Deegan.
See, for me, and some of this is a bias of my customer base, I see the T670 as the bigger deal. Not to take anything away from the R670, but this is something that we haven't had since Wi-Fi 6. It is an outdoor AP that we actually can really get excited about. 6E had no outdoor APs because of, I'm not saying anybody didn't make them. We didn't make any. Without AFC support, you couldn't run a 6E AP outside. Now you've got a Wi-Fi 7 AP that we've made that's outdoor, it's weatherized, it's shipping, right? I believe it's shipping. It's been announced. It was announced last week. If it's not shipping, it's shipping imminently.
Look, you're an outdoor guy. You should know this.
I mean, I've had them in my hand, so you can't take what I can do uh, as gospel truth, because I, again, we get a little bit of early access, but it's been released, it's been announced, it's coming soon to an outdoor mount near you is probably the best way I can put it. I can't help but get excited about this, right? I couldn't 6E, we sat out, and by we I mean me. I couldn't put a 6E outdoor AP out because I didn't have one to do, because 7 was right behind, and everything just made sense. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And the nice thing about this, and I wish I had one. I physically don't have one anymore, but I wish I had a T750, which is our Wi-Fi 6 flagship, and the T670, which right now is our only Wi-Fi 7 outdoor AP. You don't have either one to show off right now. The 670 is a decent amount smaller than the 750, and you've got a tri-radio setup in there, which is pretty nice. So yeah, I mean, you can get a kind of an idea from the picture on Jim's screen. It's more of a square, as opposed to the rectangular shape of the T750. It does take a few components out of the T750 that we didn't find a lot of customers taking advantage of. There is no weather sealed SFP port. There is no AC power, but you can still do DC. You've still got Ethernet. You've still got power over Ethernet available. So you can do Ethernet out. You can do PoE in. So it's still got all the key critical bells and whistles. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. It really is a nice form factor for this AP. It's a really, if you're concerned about size, if you're concerned about footprint on, say, an outdoor plant, it's smaller than the T750. And so it's really, I'm jazzed about this one. You're not going to nothing against the R760 or R670, R670 rather. Yeah, it's a mouthful, tongue twister. Nothing against that one at all. I'm sure it's a perfectly fine AP. I haven't had a chance to touch it yet, and I have a feeling I'm going to be spending a lot more time with the T than the R, at least over the next 6 months or so.
Yeah. I got to hold the shell, so I get to actually hold my hands on one that has all the guts. But I had a shell when we were in at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona that we were sort of teasing and showing off to select people that came by the booth. And I have to agree with you. I like the form factor of this one. It's definitely not. And had we planned this out, I actually have a T750. Like, it's actually up pretty. It's a couple shelves up in my background here, and that thing is a phenomenal beast. This one, I like this one. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about it too. I think it's a very good introduction into outdoor 6 gigahertz. Like I said, we're not the first to have an outdoor 6 gigahertz AP. However, we are the first to have a Wi-Fi 7 6 gigahertz outdoor AP. If you want to get really, really down in the particular weeds.
So I feel like it's one of those where we might as well just plant the seeds early, because we were the first to market with the Wi-Fi 7 AP in general with the R670, which won an award, at least one that I know of. Maybe this is an early contender for a repeat 2025 product of the year. Maybe, I'm just saying. But no, it's really exciting, and for anybody that may not kind of realize this, obviously 2.4 is kind of crazy congested. Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz spectrum is kind of getting there, depending on where you're at. And for some of the applications that I've seen outdoor space use this for, public Wi-Fi and things like that, you're contending with everybody's signal that you can get. So 6 gigahertz spectrum is sorely needed in those outdoor applications, the public Wi-Fi, things like that. Maybe not. I mean, it's always needed anywhere, it's extra spectrum, but I think it's going to be a real, I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but to me, it's a game changer. You're getting 6 gigahertz spectrum where it's sorely needed.
Yeah,
because I was like that was the one market, even for those vendors who put out a Wi-Fi 6E outdoor AP, they couldn't really take advantage of it because it was outdoors. You needed certain things for that, like AFC. You couldn't take advantage of it where you needed it. I don't want to say most. I mean, we can think of plenty of environments, densely populated urban environments, apartment buildings, and things like that could desperately need more spectrum. But this is one of those areas that, unlike indoor spaces in 6E, you couldn't do anything with it until now. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and it is because you're right. You know there are a lot of places where outdoor 6 gigahertz and you would be very beneficial. Stadiums, LPV type of. I mean, there's a lot of places where this is going to really turn some heads, I believe. And for those wondering and asking who aren't following along on YouTube, it is a 2x2 across all 3 bands. I'm showing the specs here, but you can go. We'll put a link in there that you can go click to get to the data sheet. Like I said, it's on the website. But you're looking at a paltry 5.7 gigabits per second, um, which I have to laugh because I'm just like I was having this conversation with somebody last week and we were talking about 5.7 gigabits per second. I mean, really? I mean, just think about that for a second. And I was, as you were talking, I was scrolling. I came down to this the Wi-Fi standards that it supports, which is the IEEE 802.11 ABGNACAXBE. And I'm just kind of going, wow, that's a. I mean,
It's everything.
In my head, I'm like, we need to have a way to kind of like roll this up. You know how they roll up the IEEE standard? We need to have a better way to roll this up because now it's getting a little, because it used to be like what ABG
ABGN.
Well, but it was you'd have ANAC and BGN and BGN, and so you only had the 3, but now it's like
getting to be a mouthful.
Yeah, but if you think about like where we started from 25 years ago with 802.11a using OFDM in 5 gigahertz, yes, that's a thing. Was a thing, still is a thing. It's 54 megabits per second. 802.11b, which was DSSS at 2.4. Getting your whopping 11 megabits per second. So to think now that we're from 11 megabits per second or 54 megabits per second to 5,765 megabits per second. Yeah, I have to agree with you. This one I'm really excited about. Hey, look, we can put 768 concurrent users, score one.
Of course, that is, of course, assuming you're using all 3 radios. But I mean, the speeds, obviously, we talked about this last episode where speed is not the end all be all for Wi-Fi. But,
no.
On the flip side, and I don't think we actually made that point last show, was for things like LPV, you're talking a stadium, an arena, convention center, that aggregate speed, that throughput is not just for one user. Obviously, we want all the speed we can get for ourselves. But if you're talking about, you've got 768 concurrent users, that's 240 something. I can't do math on the fly. Couple hundred. I mean, you want a couple hundred on a radio at a time. That's 5. Thank you, Jim. I can see a calculator, but I can't actually read it
because I haven't done the math yet.
but you're talking about a couple hundred users per channel at any given time, and you're dividing that up, and that's
take a random guess at like what common number do we normally see?
256.
Yeah, it's 256.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I don't know why 240 popped in my head, but so we can have the design discussions. You don't want 256 on a radio for other reasons, but you're dividing that 5.7 across all of those concurrent users, and that's where I think you're going to see some huge gains. I mean, look, every time we've got a Super Bowl or a major event, tournaments or big gatherings of 70, 80,000, 100,000 people in an arena, you've always got some service provider or some vendor or just some market, whether it's, I don't even know, like what are the surveys are out there. They're always posting the numbers about all the traffic, the tonnage, the throughput, the big numbers. Putting a Wi-Fi 7 AP in those environments is going to make those numbers pop even more because it's more, you look at some of the last generation, some of the last examples, and we were crushing those numbers. I mean, they're going up every year significantly. Now you're opening up with Wi-Fi 7 and buckle up. I think that's really going to be, it'll be interesting to see what those numbers start looking like when you start getting into the arenas that have, Wi-Fi 7 in the entire facility.
You know, and this was a conversation we were having last week during some testing I was doing with some of the guys there in California. And we were running some tests, and at first, for a while, we actually thought that we were struggling because OFDMA was happening. And of course, I was sitting here in Denver, and I was like, I have no way to look at the spectrum. But then I started doing some over-the-air packet captures, and I could figure out that OFDMA wasn't happening. But I'm actually really interested. I'd love to be able to get to an event that has, once this is actually deployed and in place, I'd love to be able to get to an event, a big event, and actually see like, hey, how does this stuff work? Because I believe OFDMA at 6 gigahertz could be really interesting in some of these stadium environments where you have a lot of mobile devices doing very small amount of packets. But yeah, no, this one, like I said, I'm happy with the form factor. I'm happy. There's a lot of things to be happy about with this AP. And for those of you watching, if you a little public service announcement, if you're on our website, and you see these pictures, like I said, this is just on our standard website. You see these pictures down here. When you click on the pictures, you can actually download images directly from the website. So if you're looking for a nice image of the AP, you can go download it. I'll be honest with you, that's where I get most of my images. So
Yeah, the secret's out,
yeah,
Jim.
I'm sorry.
The secret is out.
Oh, look, they put it out there. We might as well use it. I mean,
True. But so again, the T670 was not the only one we've just announced. That press release, I
correct.
think, went out about a week ago. But the R760, no, R670. Again, the sevens and the sixes are going to throw me off. They have for the last year. You'd think by now I'd get it. So the R670 was also announced recently, and
Yes.
that is, I mean, it's exciting because again, now it brings our Wi-Fi 7 offerings up to 3. We've got 2 indoor now, and the 1
Yep.
outdoor. So I mean, really and truly, you're getting more options. Obviously, 3 is better than 1. So there's probably something out there for most everybody. Well, not everybody yet. Obviously, we've got a couple. We don't have an H series one yet. Stay tuned, maybe. But this is a nice one too, and it's. I mean, what do you find appealing about this? Let's get into this since you got into the guts of the T670, and I kind of hyped it up. What are we excited for here?
Well, I mean, when you scroll down on the data sheet, it's pretty much
Looks like an indoor
very
version of
very.
the T.
It's a very very similar version of the T. So again, it's from a data perspective, we're still looking at 768, which we have now learned is 256 devices spread across the 3 radios. So you're looking, and again, and I'm actually kind of, you know what, can I make a comment right here, John?
That's why
I'm
we're
actually
here.
really happy about the fact that on our data sheets now, we're not saying, oh, we can support, 2,000 clients on an AP. I get that 256 per radio is still over what we would really want to do because it just won't work at 256. But at least we're sort of dialing down that number. And for people who only look at data sheets, you'd be like, oh, this is not as good because some other AP supports. Now they're going to come out and say they can do 6,000 client devices on an AP, and it's like,
Well, it's one of those. If anybody that's in the game, and both of us have been doing this long enough, anybody that's listening to us probably has a similar experience. Hopefully, if not, we'll give you a little bit of knowledge here. Any vendor is going to put out that they can support a certain number of, and they test up to that point, and it'll work. And honestly, you can probably get over 256 on a radio. But the reality is, if you know Wi-Fi, you recognize that anything over a certain much smaller number is going to be a very bad experience. So,
yeah,
just because we can hit 256 per radio doesn't mean we should hit 256 per radio. And honestly, I would hope you never design for that number. Now, obviously, certain areas, it's a little bit more of a challenge when you get into LPV, the convention space, things which I personally haven't designed a whole lot in. Those are a little bit trickier because you've got large groups of people, and it's a whole different ballgame. But Yeah, don't design for the maximum number that your radios can handle because you just don't do that.
So I'll tell you a story about a conversation I had with a company, and we were talking about testing, and because they make or they have or they do one of those things, one of those verbiages, um, they do virtual clients. And I wanted and I asked him about this, and it wasn't even our conversation. That wasn't why we were on the call. But I asked him. I said, "Hey, I want to hijack the call here for a few minutes." I said because I'm super curious about something. I said, "You do virtual clients." I said, "You test virtual clients. You do that kind of stuff." And I was like, "How exactly do you do that when we know for a fact that the RF, the radio, the channel itself, is going to be the bottleneck, not the processor?" And they said well, they're like, we only use our virtual clients when we're trying to stress and load up the chips on the processor chips on the AP. They're like, so when we're trying to test something that's beyond the radio itself, they said that's the only place we'll use our virtual clients is when we're trying to drive stuff. Yeah, and you could have the same thing on a switch port. You're on a switch. You're like, hey, I want to fill up the Mac tables, but I don't want to have 1,000 laptops sitting in racks and all cabled in. They said that's when we use the virtual clients. And they said, but that's the only time we use it. And if somebody ever comes to us and says, "Hey, we want to test over the air stuff," they're like, "Yeah." They're like, "That's where we want." They're like, "We won't use our tools to do over the air stuff because we know that it's the radio channel itself that becomes a bottleneck." And he goes, "And we can't simulate having that many radios." He goes, because it just doesn't, from a physics perspective, it doesn't work right. And so, yes, to your point, it's more of a stress test on the processors and the chips themselves, not on the radios. So yeah, even though it will do 256 and we say it'll do 256, don't ever put 256 clients on a radio. It won't. The RF will bite you long before the processors do. Um, the other thing we didn't mention on the T670, but it still supports all of the cool Ruckus stuff like Beamflex and PDMRC. I don't know. Have we ever talked about PDMRC since we've been doing
Not
the pod?
specifically, but I believe there's somebody that's asked to be on the show that we can probably bring in for a future upcoming episode that'll really do that justice. I think that's one of those that needs its own topic, our own show rather.
Yes.
I think it needs
So,
a good 30 to 40 minutes of hardcore. Let's get into the guts because it's a really important part of what we do and specifically what Ruckus does and how we do it so well. So
yeah.
I think it needs its own show and we'll definitely give it the proper spotlight in the not too distant future, hopefully.
So now that we've teased it, PDMRC is polar diversity maximal ratio combining. Um, but the biggest thing to remember is the polar diversity part, the PD. Basically, it's the concept, it's the idea that you have like your phone, like right now, my phone. Here's my phone. Hey, phone. My phone is sitting horizontal on my desk while we're recording.
That's not on
Right?
your desk.
So, so now that John has no longer allowed me to show off my teaching tool,
Well, just
my
you can
my phone
show
is
it. You
sitting
just can't say it's
horizontal
not.
on my
You
desk.
just can't say it's on your desk. You can show it though.
Well, but okay, so here's the thing. You can have your phone, and when I get to put it on my desk, it's sitting like this. But I also have a charger that is a wireless charger, but it sits at an angle like this. And then when I'm looking at it, a lot of times I hold it vertical. So what happens is over the course of my day, sitting at my desk, my phone will be vertical. It'll be 45 degrees, and it will be horizontal. And so that's my polarity of my antennas on my device is changing. And so polar diversity is polarity diversity. It's like, hey, you can change the polarity of your device, and the AP will has some smartness behind it that will help on the receive path. Um, and then combine those chains together. This is a 2x2. So my 2x2 chains are being, doesn't matter the polarity, it's going to combine all that stuff on the backside and recover data that you normally wouldn't. And that has to do with the antennas that we can see maybe here. So there are horizontal and vertical antennas inside the AP, and so they receive both horizontal and vertical, and in between, and they help recover that data. So that's PDMRC. Has the IoT stuff. This one's IoT's on board. I think the T670 we dropped the IoT because really it's outdoors.
Yeah, I don't remember we dropped the IoT. I know we dropped the USB though for sure.
Yeah, USB because that. Oh, you know what? We actually have the ability to go look. Let's
That's
actually
true.
take a look. we,
Well, I know certain things were culled from it because I mean, at the end of the day, when you're talking about outdoor, you might have issues powering it. Not issues, but you might have challenges powering it. So it was a matter of what what bells and whistles do you need and what aren't getting used. I mean, at the end of the day, we weren't hearing a lot of customers saying, "I want to plug in an IoT device via the USB port on an outdoor AP."
well, but also it's how much IoT is really used outdoor. I mean, it's just it's a
I
whole different use case.
I feel like that's a different conversation for a different show perhaps or maybe not, but I mean I think there's definitely use cases now, and I think we're starting to see more and more, especially with what is I think Matter is coming up now, and you've got all sorts of sensors. I could see reasons to do it. I could see certain applications wanting it more, but I think some of the areas where maybe they would have use cases for IoT, like a stadium, I think a lot of that gets done over Wi-Fi. Ticket scanners, things like that. It's all going over Wi-Fi. So at
Yeah,
that point, the AP is going there. If they want to add IoT, they can. It's nice to do it, but I think a lot of options on the Wi-Fi side as well. So, but I'm excited about both of them. Like I said, I'm going to be spending a lot more time probably with the T than the R. Nothing against the R, but it's an exciting time for us. I think we've got three nice options to
Mhm.
to support our customers and all the projects that they've got coming up. I know we've got the R770's been out for about a half a year now, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we've got some projects out there in the wild that maybe, who knows, we've got an SC listening that might want to come and say, hey, look, my customer installed some R770s. Let's talk about it. Would love to hear some of those stories at some point. But
Yeah, and from a size-wise perspective, just to wrap this up, the R670 is the same form factor as the R770, just smaller. It's just a little bit smaller. Um, but it's that same same shape, same all their other stuff. So,
yeah,
but if you're playing with the T6, if you're going to play with the T670, I guess that means I need to play with the R670.
I mean, I'm sure I'll probably wind up getting my hands on both. But so yeah, it's yeah, and it is, and if anybody's was looking at the screen share and hasn't noticed, yes, we did change the Ruckus AP aesthetics a little bit. That was done with the 6E APs. I think the
560.
I think the 560 was the first one. So and that's sort of the newer, more svelte, if you will. But it's a nice footprint. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's where we are. It's a good week when we get to talk about some new products, and we've got to talk about a couple of them. And
I mean, and let's just put this out there. I mean, I believe there's going to be a lot of Wi-Fi 7 AP announcement. I mean, we're in May, so we still have another 7 months, 7.5 months, really, if you think about it, to go in 2024. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more Wi-Fi 7 stuff coming out over the next 7.5 months through the end of the year. So, and then into next year. I mean, the difference between Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 6E was always just sort of this stepping stone, to sort of get into 6 gigahertz. But we knew that Wi-Fi 7 is in development, just like we know, and I know for a fact that the 802.11bn, which is going to eventually, I think they're going to call it Wi-Fi 8. It's just a pretty educated guess on my part at this point. But Wi-Fi 8, 802.11bn, we know the 802.11bn working group from the IEEE is happening. They had a meeting, I guess, a month ago here in Denver. If anybody's listening, I'd love to be able to come to those. Hint, hint, especially when they're in my town that I live in. Hint, hint. But we know that's in the process, and so whereas 6E was just sort of that, hey, we're going to take 802.11ax, We're going to put it in 6 gigahertz, play around with it, learn some stuff because we know that it's coming in Wi-Fi 7. So,
Yeah, I mean, typically
um,
we've got what 3 or 4 years of good use out of a
it's
generation before we start talking about the next one. And
well,
6E was I don't want to call it dead on arrival because that's not fair. It wasn't, but dead man walking is probably the better way to put it because you everybody knew that when 6E came, you had a decision. You were either going to go
yes.
6E because you wanted to be bleeding edge, or you just waited it out a little bit because you knew 7 was really, really close.
And
Whereas with 7, you know we've got runway. Yes, BN is coming. Everybody knows 8 is being worked on, 9 is being worked on. Somebody's cooking up some mad science. But it's down the road. We know it's going to
yeah,
come. There's always something bigger and better and faster and whatnot. But we've got runway here, right? We know the devices, end user devices are coming. The APs are going to be coming. We know, obviously everybody's watching the vendors. There are Wi-Fi 7 devices. Samsung has them. Google has. I think Google just actually announced another brand new phone. I think last week or 2 weeks
the
ago. The
8A.
8, yeah.
Yes,
Um,
the 8A.
Curiously, and this is the one that everybody's going to watch, and it's going to be the hot topic until September. Apple just released some new iPads. None of them have Wi-Fi 7 chips in them. I'm not 100% surprised by that, only because typically to me, the phone tends to be the first one to go, but I think when it went 6E, it wasn't. I think
No,
6E, I think the iPads got them first. So it'll be
they did.
interesting to see if that means that the phone will be the first for Wi-Fi 7 in September, or if they're going to skip a year and it's coming in 2025. Um,
I will
it's
bet,
going to be interesting to see.
I will bet you a soda pop. Mark it on the calendar. I will bet you a 12-ounce soda pop of your choosing.
Only 12. Well, we know what
That,
I'd choose, but
well, I know. That's so. And if you watch the show on YouTube, you've seen him drink it. So,
not today.
um,
I'm out. So
not today,
it's a
but
scary day. I'm out.
I will bet you a soda pop that the next Apple cellular device will not be 7. It will be 6E. I think
Interesting.
it will disappoint a lot of people. I think they hold off again. But
And Apple's an interesting case. I mean, you've got enough, and we could spend the entire show debating that. Like, they've got enough reason to do it because they're main competitors, and you could argue that the Samsung, the Galaxy, and the Google Pixel are probably their main two competitors. And I don't follow the handset wars like I used to, but they've both gone the Wi-Fi 7 path. But at the same point in time, while they might have reason and motivation to do it because of that, we also know that Apple, they very much march to their own drum, right? And so they've killed off interfaces long before anybody else did, and everybody thought they were crazy, and then now everybody's done the same thing. They could wait, they could do it. I could see both ways. I could see them doing it where the Pro has the Wi-Fi 7 and the regular phone does not. Nothing would
so,
surprise me at this point. Until September, I won't believe anything I hear or see, and I'm not touching
well,
that bet.
I'm I will bet you a 12-ounce soda pop. And I'm saying soda pop on purpose, just because I'm being particular. But I will bet you that it does not have it. But it goes back to what you were talking about, like the lead or the runway, or like how long is useful. Like you were talking about Wi-Fi 6E versus Wi-Fi 7. But however, I'm gonna tell you something. Like I said, I had a couple of old APs sitting here on the floor, and it's because I need to upgrade my R610 that has been on Ruckus 1. I actually need to upgrade this now. It started biting me in some testing I was doing earlier today. And I'm going to update it to the R350. So here's the thing, right? We were talking about in the spec sheets where the APs are now 802.11 ABGN ACAXBE compatible. The backwards compatibility, I think, is one of the reasons why they're not, because you can still put a 6E Wi-Fi chip into a device and it's going to work on 7 gig or Wi-Fi 7 in 6 gigahertz outdoor, indoor. It's going to work on all of those other ones. It's backwards compatible. And so when you talk about, do you buy, a Wi-Fi 6 or a Wi-Fi 6E or a Wi-Fi 7, there's a big difference between the 6E is an outlier because there was Wi-Fi 5, 802.11 AC, and we don't talk about this as much as we should. There was wave 1 and wave 2. And so even though, we have 6E, 6E was kind of like the wave 2, but we didn't really talk about it in that sense because marketing got a hold of it, called it the 6E. But Wi-Fi 5 APs like my 610 I got right here, are still very useful today. I mean, not for, again, I only took it down not because it wasn't working, but because I needed it to do newer things, which is why I'm now going to a newer thing of a Wi-Fi 6, the R350 that came out, what, 4 years ago? 3 years ago? So I have no problem deploying this, but it's based on my needs. I don't need 6 gigahertz, but I need a newer chipset. And so this is my weapon of choice for my new chipset that I need to do testing with today and tomorrow. But that's so I think that's the question is now it's 6 or 7, because both of them are still viable, but it depends on your use case. And we've done that with the it depends and the 10 things we wish you knew about Wi-Fi. There's all kinds of different things that drive which model you pick. What I appreciate the most is, in May of 2024, we now have 3 Wi-Fi 7 APs in which to make that decision. And so I've already made my decision, and I'm going to go talk to my boss later today. And if you're listening, boss, I was talking to you about this last night. I'm going to see if I can get my hands on an R670, because that's the one that I really want to play with, because it'll slot right on my shelf right there. Really nice and easy. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a good time to be a consumer. It's a good time to be a customer, because at the end of the day, like you said, you still got the Wi-Fi 6 APs that are perfectly viable. You've got the Wi-Fi 6E APs. We've done a couple. They're perfectly fine. And now you've got 3 from the Wi-Fi 7. So if you are in a position where you want to be bleeding edge and you want to make sure you've got the longest longevity possible, and we do support our gear for quite a long time for all intents and purposes, we could have we might actually do a whole show on that in typical, terms of from the time it's born to the time it gets its, EOS, and how long that runs. And I find it rather impressive, but you've got options, right? And options are good. And it's options for us as consumers, because, you don't have to upgrade to Wi-Fi 7. There's certainly obviously benefits. We've talked about some of them, and we'll talk about them more in the future, because Jim loves talking about Wi-Fi 7, but it's a really good time to be, and we've been saying this all year, it's a great time to be a Wi-Fi professional, because we've got new toys, we've got new APs to talk about, we've got new technology to really get our hands on, and most importantly, we're actually back in the offices, and we're back with the clients and the customers deploying things and getting our hands dirty again, which is something that over the last couple of years with social distancing and all that it was problematic. We were missing some parts of our experience. It was harder to get on site to do some testing. It was harder to coordinate. Now, not really a problem. So I think as things get released, I think we're going to see some exciting, like you said, I'm waiting to see some real world activities, real world examples of this, reports of it, discussions. I think it's going to be an exciting, again, the next couple of years are going to be really, really, really slick to see what happens. So that's all I got.
And then we'll have one down year, and then we'll be back to Wi-Fi 8. So that's just just cycle. That's a cycle of Wi-Fi. So
it's a circle of life.
Join the ride.
Well, cool. I have nothing else, Mr. Palmer. How about you?
No, I'm good, man.
All right. Well, on that note, we will catch everybody on the next episode. Hey there. Thanks for listening. If you liked our show and haven't yet done so, please like and subscribe. If you want to contact the show directly, you can email us at ruckcast@comscope.com. Jim and I both read those emails. To learn more about any Ruckus products or services that we've talked about on this or any other prior podcast, please check out our About section of the show or the show notes. And as always, thank you for listening.